Good morning, children, and welcome to all of you in online classes. Dear students, we are discussing about chapter 1, and the name of chapter is The Last Lesson. This particular lesson or chapter is written by Alphonse Daudet, one of the renowned famous French writer who was born in 1840. This particular writer, Alphonse Daudet, was born in 1840 and died in 1897 and contributed a lot in the freedom of France. And I have told you in previous videos that this writer, French writer, was very much upset and pained with the defeat of France against Prussia, and that Prussia, which was a big country comprising Germany and Austria. Dear students, this particular lesson I have taught you in previous videos is about two characters. One is Mr. Hamel, the strict teacher, or another is the narrator, Mr. Little French. So this lesson is about mainly two characters. Or this lesson is about the importance of language. How language is important for anybody, for any person, for any country. This we have to discuss or in this lesson. In previous videos, dear students, we have discussed that Mr. Little French, who started his journey from his home to his school, or when he was going to school, he was in hurry, or when he reached to the town hall, he observed that there was a big crowd all around the bulletin board, and the writer was very much frightened and upset to see this crowd, because in last 2 years Mr. Narrator Little French received many bad news, sad news from that bulletin board. So he decided not to spoil his day and to go to school. Or later on he was interrupted by that blacksmith who had told him that he should not go in hurry, there was enough time. But the narrator, Mr. Little French, took it negatively, or he thought that blacksmith was making fun of him, and he increased his speed, and finally he reached to the school. Or when he reached to the school, he found that there was a complete silence, no commotion and no noise on that day. It was looking that there was a holiday on that day. But when he entered in the class, dear students, when he entered in the school campus, he found that the class was going on. Or when he reached to his school, his classroom gate, so there was a fear in his mind, or he was hesitating to enter in the class, because the teacher, Mr. Hamel, was very much strict. But anyhow, he stored courage, or when he entered in the class, So at that day, one strange thing was there, that strict teacher who was famous for his ruler, famous for giving punishment to the students, Mr. Hamel, he did not punish him. Or another special thing, that he was in special dress. Another surprising thing, that back benches were occupied by some old people, farmer mayor, postman, and Miss Hasser, and many others. So these things were the surprising for him. Or the most surprising thing was that was announced by Mr. Hamel, their language, that was the last class, or it was the last French class, it was the last class of their language. So listening this, Mr. Little French was completely upset, completely surprised, because it was a shocking news for him. It was really a very shocking news. I have told you yesterday that what a thunderclap these words were for the writer, were for the narrator. But anyhow, he understood the situation, or he concentrated in that. Dear students, when Mr. Little French was sitting in the class, he was regretting too much. Regretting that why he could not learn and why he could not utilize his time in learning his language, in learning the French class, in definitely why he could not concentrate in his studies. This was the regression. Or finally, dear students, I told you that he understood, his name was called by the teacher Mr. Hamel, and he could not give the answer. But on that day, dear students, Mr. Hamel did not punish him. He told him that he was feeling bad enough as he was unable to give the answer. So he was standing at his place, taking support of table, but unable to give the answer. Or for his situation, Mr. M. Hamel told him that he was not only responsible, his parents were also responsible, because they sent him, they wanted to send him in factories, in mills, to earn money. Their interest was not that their son should go and study regularly. So parents were responsible. This was told by Mr. Hamel. Our next thing, he told that he himself was responsible for the position and for the situation of Mr. Little French. Because whenever he used to call in holidays and other days, suppose, so he used to engage Mr. Little French and in other work, either it is watering the flowers, or he used to suppose send them home whenever he had to go to catch the fishes. So these were the reasons told by Mr. Hamel for the position of Mr. Little French, or he talked very politely. So up to this, dear students, we have discussed. And now I am going to tell you that then from one thing to another, Mr. Hamel went into talk to French language. Mr. Hamel talked many things Mr. Hamel told many things about the French language to the students and to the people, those who were sitting in the class. Or finally he told that French was the most beautiful language in the world. Mr. Hamel told the students, told little friends, that French is the most beautiful language. Or if for everyone, for anybody, his or her language is definitely beautiful. In the same way, Mr. Hamel told the students that his language, means French language, is the most beautiful language. And not only this much, that it is the most beautiful language, it is the clearest one also. And most logical also, most reasonable also. So there he told many qualities of his French language. The language is most beautiful. It is the most. It is the clearest language, or it is the most logical also. Not only this much, dear students, he advised the students that they should guard, they should protect their language. They must guard it, and they should never forget it. Means the advice of Mr. M. Hamel was to the people, to the students, that though their cities, though their country has been enslaved by Germans, by Prussia, but they should not forget their language, they should not leave their language, or they always try to protect and they always try to guard their language, and they should speak among themselves. And he also told one more important thing, कि whenever people are enslaved, so at that time their language work as a weapon. Their language work as a key to open the gate of prison. Here is given कि French, saying that it was the most beautiful language and language in the world that is the clearest and most logical, or we must guard it among us and never forget it. Means the people should never forget the French language, because when the people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had to key to their prison. It means if the people are connected with the language, with their mother tongue, so there is a chance, there is a possibility, then there can be possible that they can make them free, or they can definitely they can be free from slavery. But if the people will forget their language, so there is no chance to escape and to make free and to get freedom. Their language is only the key to open the gate of prison. So this was the advice. This Mr. M. Hamel wanted to convey. Or after that, what happened, dear students? After that, Mr. Hamel opened the grammar book and to teach the students. Mr. Hamel opened the grammar book on that day. And after these beautiful advices, Mr. Hamel started teaching, and firstly he taught grammar. He opened the grammar and read us our lessons. The writer was amazed on that day. The writer was completely surprised. Or what was the reason of surprise? That French was amazed to see how well he understood. Other days, before that day, whenever Mr. Little French was sitting in the class and when Mr. Hamel was teaching in the class, so Mr. French was not able to understand his teacher. But on that day, in last lecture, in last class, Mr. French was able to understand each and everything taught by Mr. Hamel. Here is given. Okay, then I was amazed to see how well I understood. All he said seemed so easy and so easy. Means all the things and all the points which were explained by Mr. Hamel, they were seeming very easy and very easy to Mr. Little French. Means all the things were clear to him. I think too that I have never, there were two reasons behind that. Why Mr. Little French was able to understand each and everything? The reason is that before that day Mr. Little French was not serious in class. Or secondly, the teacher had never taught with such patience, with such effort. So two reasons were there. Teacher was also serious and students were also serious. Where it is written, I never listened so carefully that he had never explained everything with so much patience. On that day, Mr. Hamel was explaining each and everything with patience, with more effort. And here Mr. Little French was also serious, very serious on that day. Here is given. Or before that, dear students, here is given that before going away, one more thing he wanted to do on that day, he wanted to give each and everything to his students. He did not want to leave a single thing. Whatever was in the mind of Mr. M. Hamel, he wanted to deliver, he wanted to teach, he wanted to give his students. Where it is written, it seemed almost as if the poor man, means that M. Hamel, wanted to give us all he knew before going away, before suppose leaving the class. He wanted to teach each and everything, or his wish was that his students should learn each and everything, or to put it into our heads at one stroke, or his wish was that whatever he was teaching, that should definitely come in the mind of students, and he wanted to enter all the things at once, at one stroke. This was the motive and this was the effort of Mr. M. Hamel on that day. Before that, he was not so serious. Before that, Mr. Little French was not so serious in studies. But on that day, both the teacher and students, both were serious. Or what happened after that, dear students? After teaching, after grammar we had lessons in writing also. After completing that, Mr. Hamel gave some portion of writing also, or Mr. Hamel had given some new copies also. Mr. Hamel had new copies for the students. Or what was written? He wanted to give some writing work to the students, or for that he had brought copies also, or he wanted to give each and every students individually the copies which he has brought, or what was written on that copy on the front page. We had lessons in writing, and that day Mr. Hamill had new